I was walking down the street when these two girls I've never seen before called my name and said, "Ryan, this is super weird, but our best friend's baby shower is happening right now. Can you please pretend to be her boyfriend and the father?" They looked so desperate and explained her ex was insane, had tried to burn their house down while she was inside, and was coming at 3 p.m. to reclaim what's his. So against every logical thought, I followed them into this house covered in pink balloons and baby girl banners. I was walking down the street when these two girls I've never seen before called my name. "Ryan, this is super weird, but our best friend's baby shower is happening right now. Can you please pretend to be her boyfriend and the father?" I did a double take. They looked so desperate. Her ex is insane. He's tried to burn their house down while she was in. He's going to show up at some point, and we need someone who can scare him off. I'm 6 feet 4 inches and apparently look like I eat nails for breakfast, so I get why they picked me. But this was insane. "How do you even know my name?" "Your gym bag," one said, pointing at the tag. "Please." He said he's coming at 3 p.m. to reclaim what's his. It's 2:15. Against every logical thought, I followed them into this house covered in pink balloons and baby girl banners. The living room was packed with women who all turned to stare at me. Then I saw her. Becky from my comparative lit class sophomore year. The girl I'd spent an entire semester trying to work up the courage to talk to. Now 8 months pregnant, looking exhausted. It seemed like the worst joke the universe has ever played. "Everyone, this is Ryan," the girls announced. "The father." Becky's eyes went wide, recognizing me, but she played along. "Hey babe," she said weakly. Her friend pulled me aside. "Richard's been sending videos all morning. He's unhinged. Just stand there and look protective until he shows up and leaves." I stood by Becky's chair while she opened presents. The party tried to feel normal, but everyone was tense. Her phone buzzed. She showed me a video from Richard. "On my way to get what's mine. Hope you didn't think you could replace me. This is the 6th one today," Becky whispered. An older woman, maybe an aunt, said quietly to another guest, "Remember when Richard threw that bottle at her head at Christmas?" Becky's mom approached me. "Thank you for doing this. Last time he showed up somewhere, he broke her friend's nose for interfering." Another video came through at 2:30. Richard in his truck. "Tell everyone to clear out unless they want problems." The room got quieter. People kept glancing at the windows. At 2:40, another text. "Nice pink decorations. Almost there." A friend mentioned, "He knows which house. He's probably driving by." Becky tried to focus on opening a baby onesie, but her hands were shaking. "Last time he came to a party," someone whispered. 4 people went to the ER. At 2:50, Becky's phone rang. She put it on speaker by accident. Richard's voice filled the room. "I see you have people over. That's cute." 10 minutes. The entire party shifted away from the front of the house. Women were grabbing their kids, moving them to back rooms. "Should we call the police now?" Becky's mom asked. "They won't come until something happens," someone responded. "We tried before." At 2:55, a text with a photo of the house from outside. "I counted about 20 cars. Hope your new man is ready." Becky stood behind me instinctively. The room was silent except for some kid's cartoon playing in the background. 3 p.m. exactly. A truck engine revving outside, music blasting then cutting off. Heavy footsteps on the porch. The door didn't knock. It just opened. Richard walked in like he owned the place. 6 feet 2 inches. Neck tattoos. Wearing a tank top that showed military ink covering his arms. His eyes scanned the room until they found me. "So, you're the replacement." His voice was calm, which was somehow worse. "I'm here for Becky. You need to leave." He laughed. "They hired security? That's adorable." "I'm not security. I'm the father." His whole demeanor changed. Face went from amused to deadly. "The F you just say?" Becky stepped slightly out from behind me. "You heard him, Richard. That's my kid, Becky. 4 years together." "No, Richard. We broke up 10 months ago." "Do the math." He took a step forward, but I blocked his path. "This is a family event," I said. "You're not family." "Family?" He looked around the room. "These people watched me and her for years." Tell him whose baby that is." Becky's mom's voice was steel. "Someone who isn't welcome in my home." Richard's face went red. "You old bitch." I stepped directly in front of him. "Watch your mouth." He looked up at me, really seeing the size difference for the first time. "You think being tall means crap? I've killed bigger men than you overseas, and I'm supposed to be impressed?" "Richard," Becky said, voice stronger now. "You got the DNA test results. You know it's not yours. Those tests can be faked. Then take another one," I said. "Through the court. But today, you leave." He looked around. 20 phones pointed at him. One of Becky's friend holding the golf club. Me blocking his path to Becky. "This isn't over," he said, backing toward the door. "Not even close." He pointed at me. "I'll find out everything about you. Good luck with that." He slammed the door so hard a picture fell off the wall. Everyone started breathing again. Becky collapsed into a chair. "Thank you," she whispered to me. "You don't know what you just did." Her mom was crying with relief. "He actually left. He never just leaves." We tried to resume the party, but everyone was still shaken. Becky opened a few more gifts half-heartedly. About 20 minutes later, I walked Becky to my car to grab something. We found all 4 tires slashed. "Oh my God," Becky gasped. Then her phone buzzed. A text from Richard with a photo of my license plate. "Ryan, Berkeley graduate, 3712 Pine Avenue, apartment 6C. See you soon, hero." My blood went cold. He had my address. I stood there staring at my phone screen, reading Richard's text over and over. He had my full address, my apartment number, everything. Becky was still next to me, looking at my slashed tires, and I could feel her shaking. "Ryan, I'm so sorry," she whispered. "This is all my fault." Before I could respond, women from the baby shower started coming out of the house. They gathered in the driveway, forming a protective circle around us. Blake pushed through the group, her phone already pressed to her ear. "Yes, we need an officer at 4782 Maple Street," she was saying. "There's been property damage and threats." I kept looking at my tires, 4 neat slashes in each one. Richard had taken his time, made sure I couldn't drive anywhere. The women around us were talking all at once, voices overlapping with worry and anger. 15 minutes later, a police officer pulled up. She was young, maybe mid-20s, and looked tired already. She took photos of my tires, wrote down what happened, but I could tell from her face this wasn't going to go anywhere. "So he threatened you via text message and damaged your property," she said, reviewing her notes. "But you didn't actually see him slash the tires? Who else would it be?" Lauren asked. "He literally just left after threatening everyone." The officer sighed. "Without proof it was him specifically, and without direct physical harm, there's not much we can do. The threats would need to be more specific. Saying see you soon isn't technically a threat of violence." Everyone started talking at once. Someone mentioned the Christmas incident. Another person brought up the broken nose. The officer just kept shaking her head. "Has he actually hurt someone today? Right now?" she asked. "He has to hurt someone first?" Blake's voice was sharp. "That's what you're telling us? I'm sorry. That's how the law works. You can file for a restraining order." "We tried that," Becky said quietly. "His lawyer got the last one thrown out. Said I was being vindictive because of the pregnancy." The officer left after giving me a case number for insurance. We all stood in the driveway, nobody quite sure what to do next. Lauren was the first to speak up. "We'll drive you to your your apartment. You need to get your stuff. I can't ask you to— You're not asking, Samantha interrupted. We're telling you. Come on. Becky grabbed my arm as I turned to go. You can't go back there. Not to stay. He knows where you live. Her mom nodded. You're staying here tonight. We have a guest room. I wanted to argue, to say this wasn't my problem, that I'd already done enough. But looking at Becky's face, seeing the fear there, I knew I'd already crossed a line. There was no walking away from this now. The drive to my apartment was quiet. Lauren drove while Samantha kept checking the mirrors, making sure nobody was following us. When we got there, my building looked the same as always, but everything felt different. Dangerous. Make it quick, Lauren said. In and out. My apartment was on the 6th floor. We took the stairs because Samantha said elevators were traps. Nowhere to run if Richard showed up. Inside, I grabbed a duffel bag and started throwing clothes in. Laptop, charger, some work files. My hands were shaking, which made me angry. I wasn't supposed to be the one running scared. My neighbor, Mr. Chen, poked his head out as we were leaving. Everything okay, Ryan? These ladies friends of yours? Yeah, everything's fine, I lied, then thought better of it. Actually, if you see a guy with neck tattoos asking about me, call 911. His face went serious. Trouble? Maybe. Just be careful. Back at Blake's house, we sat around the kitchen table like we were planning a war. Becky had her phone out, scrolling through months of messages from Richard, each one worse than the last. Look at this one, she said, showing me a text from 3 weeks ago. It was a photo of her at a grocery store with a message, nice melons you're buying, and this. Another photo, her at a doctor's appointment. Hope the baby's healthy. Would be a shame if something happened. Blake pulled out a thick folder and dropped it on the table. It made a heavy sound. Police reports, she said. 2 years worth. Nothing ever sticks. I flipped through them. Harassment, stalking, property damage, violation of restraining order. I'm really curious how Ryan went from just walking down the street to suddenly being in the middle of this scary situation. The way those girls spotted his gym bag name tag and just grabbed him shows how desperate they were. Each one stamped no further action or insufficient evidence. He knows exactly how far he can push, Blake explained. Never quite crosses the line into something they can prosecute, and he's smart about alibis. By 9 o'clock, we were cleaning up the baby shower decorations. Pink streamers came down, balloons got popped, the baby girl banner folded away. It felt wrong, packing away what should have been happy memories. Blake was washing dishes while I helped dry. You need to understand something, she said quietly. That fire he set, Becky barely made it out. She was sleeping, woke up to smoke. If her roommate hadn't come home early, she didn't finish, didn't need to. The investigator said it was electrical, she continued. But we know, Richard was supposedly at a bar with friends. They all backed him up. He's always got someone ready to lie for him. My phone rang, unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but Blake nodded at me to pick up. Hello? Ryan? Buddy? Richard's voice was friendly, like we were old friends. Listen, I think we got off on the wrong foot. Why don't we meet up? Just the two of us. Talk this out like men. I looked at Blake, who was already grabbing a pen and paper. I put the phone on speaker. I don't think that's a good idea, Richard. Come on, man. You seem like a reasonable guy. This is all just a big misunderstanding. Becky and I, we have history. You get that, right? Sometimes couples fight. You're not a couple. You haven't been for 10 months. His voice got harder. That's what she told you? Let me guess. She also told you the baby isn't mine? The DNA test told me that. There was silence for a moment. Then Richard laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Those tests can be wrong. Labs make mistakes. But hey, we can sort all this out. How about tomorrow? Coffee? I know you like that place on 3rd Street. My stomach turned. He'd been watching me long enough to know where I got coffee. I'm going to hang up now, Richard. That's fine. We'll talk soon. Real soon. The line went dead. Blake had written down the number, the time, everything. Half an hour later, Becky came downstairs in pajamas, holding her belly. Can't sleep. The baby's doing gymnastics. She sat down carefully on the couch. I could see how tired she was, not just from today, but from months of this. I'm sorry you got pulled into this, she said. It's not your fault. She laughed, but it was bitter. I picked him. I stayed with him, even after the first time he hit me. Blake started to say something, but Becky kept going. He cried after, got on his knees, begged me to forgive him, said it was the stress from his deployment, that he'd get help, and I believed him. She rubbed her belly where I could see the baby moving. He was so charming at first, brought me flowers every week, knew exactly what to say. That's how they work, Blake said softly. The controls started small, Becky continued. Didn't like my friends, thought my clothes were too revealing, got upset if I didn't text back fast enough. By the time I realized what was happening, I was already trapped. The next morning, I woke up on Blake's couch to the sound of her on the phone. My back hurt and my neck was stiff, but that wasn't important. Blake was pacing, her voice tight with anger. No, you don't understand. He's escalating. Yesterday was just the beginning. Yes, I'll hold. She covered the phone and looked at me. Lawyer. Richard sent emails overnight. Emails? To everyone. Becky's boss, her landlord, her cousins, even found her high school friends on Facebook. He's telling them all she's mentally unstable, that she's keeping his baby from him. Becky came down the stairs slowly, one hand on her back. He's trying to destroy my life. Make it so I have nowhere to go except back to him. The lawyer, when Blake got her back on the line, confirmed what we already knew. It's character assassination. Blake repeated what she was hearing. Common tactic. Destroy her credibility before his next move. By noon, we were at the police station. Detective Jerome Dooley was older, maybe 50, with gray hair and tired eyes. He'd seen this before, you could tell. Mr. Thompson, Ms. Martinez, he said, reading our statements. I understand your frustration, but Richard hasn't technically broken any laws. He slashed my tires, I said. Can you prove it was him? Any witnesses? Video? He sent me a text right after with my address. That's circumstantial. Could be coincidence. Becky laughed, but there was no humor in it. Coincidence. Right. Detective Dooley leaned forward. Look, I believe you. I've been doing this 20 years. I know his type, but the law needs proof. Hard evidence. Get security cameras. Document everything. The moment he crosses the line, someone has to get hurt first. Becky finished. I know. Everyone keeps saying that. I'm sorry. That's how the system works. We left the station feeling worse than when we'd arrived. Lauren was waiting outside to drive us to Becky's apartment. She needed more clothes, especially with the baby coming so soon. But when we got to Becky's building, her apartment door was slightly open. Don't, Lauren said as Becky reached for the handle. Let me. Lauren pushed the door open with her foot. The apartment looked normal at first. Nothing obviously disturbed. Kitchen clean, living room tidy. But then Becky gasped. On her pillow was a tiny pink booty. One from yesterday's baby shower. He was here, Becky whispered. He has a key. He was in my bedroom. I pulled out my phone to call the police, but we all knew what they'd say. No forced entry. Nothing stolen. Nothing damaged. Just a booty on a pillow. He's showing me he can get to me whenever he wants, Becky said, backing out of the apartment. Blake called a locksmith while we waited in the hallway. 3 hours and $500 later, every lock was changed. The locksmith, an older guy named Frank, shook his head as he worked. Third job like this week, he said. Lot of women with ex problems lately. Lately? Blake asked. Well, always, I guess. Just seems worse now. Like these guys don't understand no know anymore. I tried to go back to work on day 4, thought maybe some normalcy would help, but when I walked into the office, my coworkers were looking at me strange. Ryan, my boss Janet, called me into her office. We had a visitor yesterday. My stomach sank. Said he was the father of your girlfriend's baby, that you'd kidnapped her. He seemed very concerned. Janet, I can explain. She held up her hand. I don't need details, but whatever's going on in your personal life, it can't come to work. He made quite a scene. Security had to escort him out. I'm sorry, he's dangerous. My girlfriend's ex. Do you need some time off to sort this out? I wanted to say no, that I needed the distraction of work, but I could see it in her eyes. She wanted me gone until this was over. Yeah, maybe a few days. That evening, Becky called me crying. Someone claiming to be her husband had called all her doctors and canceled her appointments. I'm 8 months pregnant, she sobbed. I need these appointments. The baby could come any time. Blake spent hours on the phone finding new doctors, explaining the situation. Most were sympathetic but scared. One receptionist admitted they'd had problems with violent exes before. We can see her, but she'll need to use a different name for safety, the receptionist said. Day 5. I was at my usual coffee shop, trying to feel normal for just an hour, when Richard sat down across from me. He was smiling like we were friends. Ryan, he said, sliding into the booth. Good to finally talk. My hand tightened on my coffee cup, but I kept my voice steady. You need to leave. Public place. Free country. He pulled out his phone, started sliding through photos. You know, I researched you. Berkeley graduate. Good job at Morrison Tech. Clean record. The photos were of me, at work, at the gym, getting my mail yesterday morning. Why throw it all away for some girl you don't even know? He kept sliding through pictures. This is you at your parents' house last Christmas. Nice place. Suburbs. White fence. The threat was clear. He knew about my family. You're documenting your own stalking, I said, trying to sound calmer than I felt. Thanks for the evidence. His smile dropped. Evidence? You think the cops care? You think anybody cares about some nobody playing hero? He leaned forward. I did 4 tours in Afghanistan. You know what I learned there? The system doesn't work. Rules don't matter. What matters is who's willing to go furthest. Is that a threat? It's information. Walk away now, Ryan. This isn't your fight. She's not your girl. That's not your baby. You're just some random guy who got pulled into something he doesn't understand. I understand enough, he laughed. No, you don't. Becky and I, we have history. 4 years. You don't just walk away from that. She's confused right now. Hormonal from the pregnancy. She'll come back. They always do. The DNA test says tests can be wrong. Labs can be bought. You really think that baby isn't mine? I stood up. We're done here. Sit down. His voice was different now. Harder. I'm not finished. Yes, you are. I walked out, but I could feel him watching me leave. My hands were shaking as I got to my car. I sat there for a minute, trying to calm down, then called my lawyer. He just made contact, I told her. Made threats about my family. Did you record it? Number didn't think to. Start recording everything. Every interaction. But be careful. He's smart. He's done this before. Before? I pulled some records. Another ex-girlfriend 2 years ago. She filed multiple reports, then suddenly dropped everything and moved to Oregon. What happened? Officially, she decided not to pursue charges. Unofficially, she was terrified. 3 days later, I went with Becky to her new doctor. Richard, knowing Ryan's coffee spot really makes me wonder how long he's been watching everyone involved. Those photos of Ryan's parents' house seem like more than just casual surveillance. This guy has been doing serious homework on someone he supposedly just met at a baby shower. The waiting room was full of happy pregnant couples, and Becky grabbed my hand when a tall man walked in. It's okay, I whispered. It's not him. But I understood her fear. Every door opening could be Richard. Every footstep behind us. The doctor took her blood pressure 3 times because it was so high. You need to find ways to relax, he said. This stress isn't good for you or the baby. Becky almost laughed. Relax. Right. Is everything okay at home? We looked at each other. How do you explain this to someone? It's complicated, Becky finally said. That evening, day 8, a process server knocked on Blake's door. Legal papers. Richard was suing for custody, claiming Becky was an unfit mother. Blake read through the papers, her face getting redder with each page. He's saying she's mentally unstable, that she's denying him access to his child, that she's living with a stranger who's violent. Violent? I asked. I've never. He's twisting everything. Says you assaulted him at the baby shower. Blake threw the papers across the room. He's using the system against us, making us fight in court while he stalks us. Day 9, I went back to my apartment to pack more things. Mr. Chen stopped me in the hallway. That man came by yesterday, he said quietly. The one with the neck tattoos. What did he want? Asked about you. Said he was your girlfriend's brother. Worried about her. I didn't tell him anything, but Ryan, be careful. Day 11 was when everything escalated. Lauren called me panicking. Richard had shown up at her work. He made a scene in the lobby, she said, yelling about how I was hiding his pregnant girlfriend. Security threw him out, but my boss is furious. An hour later, Samantha texted. He'd been to her gym too, telling people she was part of a conspiracy to keep him from his child. He's punishing everyone from the baby shower, Becky said when she heard. Everyone who helped me. That night, we were all at Blake's house. Me, Becky, Blake, Lauren, and Samantha. We were trying to eat dinner to pretend things were normal when we heard the crash. Glass exploded into the living room. Then another crash. Another. Bricks were flying through the windows. Get down! I yelled, pulling Becky to the floor. More crashes. The front windows, the kitchen, glass everywhere. Becky was covering her belly, crying. Blake was on the phone with 911. Then, as suddenly as it started, it stopped. We heard a truck engine roar and tires squeal away. Is everyone okay? I asked, helping Becky up. She had a small cut on her hand from the glass, but nothing serious. We were all shaking. The living room was destroyed. Glass everywhere. Bricks on the floor. The neighbor's security camera had caught everything. Richard's truck, clear as day. Him throwing the bricks, driving away. Finally, Blake said when the police arrived. Finally, we have real evidence. Detective Dooley showed up personally. We'll arrest him in the morning, he said, looking at the damage. This is felony vandalism, assault with a deadly weapon. He crossed the line, but we all knew Richard would make bail. We all knew this wasn't over. That night, none of us really slept. Blake swept glass until 3 in the morning, even though we told her to stop. Becky stayed in the guest room with towels stuffed under the door. Said the glass smell made her sick. I sat on the couch listening to every car that passed, wondering if Richard would come back to finish what he started. Detective Dooley called at 10 the next morning. We got him at his workplace, made quite a scene. Later, we found out from someone who worked there that Richard had made sure everyone saw him being handcuffed, kept yelling about false accusations and corrupt cops. His bail was set at $5,000. His mother paid it, and he was out by 1 in the afternoon. 3 hours. That's all the peace we got. By 4 o'clock, his truck drove past Blake's house. Slow, windows down, music blasting. The restraining order said he couldn't come within 500 feet, but the street was exactly 501 feet from the front door. Richard had measured. A week crawled by with Richard testing every boundary. He'd park just outside the restraining order distance, show up at places right after we left. Always legal, always calculated. Day 19, we had had to face him in court for the custody hearing. Becky threw up twice that morning from nerves. Her belly was huge now. She could barely fit behind the defendant's table. Richard showed up in a suit and tie, hair cut short, looking like a concerned father. His lawyer was this older woman who specialized in father's rights cases. She painted a picture that made me sick. My client has been systematically denied access to his child, she said. Ms. Martinez has enlisted a stranger, a man she barely knows, to play father to keep my client away from his baby. The judge, a tired-looking man in his 60s, looked at me. How long have you known Ms. Martinez? We knew each other in college, Your Honor. We reconnected recently. Richard's lawyer jumped on that. Recently meaning 2 weeks ago. This man has known my client's pregnant ex-girlfriend for 2 weeks and is already living with her. I'm not living with. He's been staying at her mother's house, playing house, confusing my client's unborn child. The judge ordered a paternity test after birth and supervised visitation if Richard was the father. Becky ran to the bathroom afterward, and I heard her throwing up again. Blake rubbed her back while she cried. He's going to get access to my baby, she kept saying. After everything, they're going to give him access. 2 days later, Detective Dooley suggested I should stay somewhere else. Your presence escalates things, he said. Richard sees you as the obstacle. If you're not there, maybe he backs off. So I moved to a cheap hotel off Highway 9. $40 a night, smelled like cigarettes, but it was away from Blake's house. Becky texted me constantly. Every sound made her jump. Every car that passed could be him. Day 22, Richard started his online campaign. Facebook posts about being kept from his child. Photos from when he and Becky were together. Her smiling at some beach. This was us before she lost her mind, he wrote. Now she won't even let me feel my baby kick. Strangers commented horrible things about Becky. Called her selfish, cruel, said she was using the baby as a weapon. Lauren and Samantha reported every post, but Facebook said it didn't violate community standards. Day 25, 3 in the morning, my phone rang. Blake's voice was tight with panic. She's in labor. We're heading to Memorial Hospital. I threw on clothes and drove probably twice the speed limit. Found them in the maternity ward. Becky clutching Blake's hand through contractions. She looked so young and scared. You came, she whispered between contractions. Of course I came. An hour later, Richard showed up. We could hear him in the hallway, demanding to be in the delivery room. That's my child being born. I have rights. Security kept him in the waiting room, but his voice carried. Becky's blood pressure spiked so high the nurses got worried. They moved us to a room further from the waiting area, but we could still hear him sometimes, yelling about father's rights and discrimination. Cassandra was born at 9:23 a.m., while Richard live-streamed from the waiting room. They're keeping me from my daughter's birth, he told his phone. This is what fathers deal with in America. When security tried to stop him from entering the maternity ward, he shoved past them, got all the way to the nursery window before 3 guards pulled him out. Becky held Cassandra tight, tears streaming down her face, not from joy, but from fear. The next day, Richard filed emergency custody papers. His lawyer argued that denying a father access to his newborn was abuse. The judge, different from the last one, ordered a paternity test immediately. They took Cassandra's blood while she was barely 30 hours old. Becky sobbed as they pricked her tiny heel. The results would take a week. We left the hospital on day 28 with Richard sitting in his truck in the parking lot. Perfectly legal. It was a public lot. He waved as we drove past, that same calm smile from the coffee shop. Blake's house felt different with a baby there. Cassandra's cries at night, the smell of formula, tiny clothes everywhere. I came by every day to help, bringing groceries, holding Cassandra while Becky showered, whatever they needed. Day 35, the first paternity test came back. Richard wasn't the father. We thought it was over. We were so naive. His lawyer filed a motion that same day claiming the test was tampered with, said the chain of custody was broken, demanded an independent test at a lab of Richard's choosing. The judge, exhausted by the case, agreed. How is this legal? Becky asked her lawyer. The test proved he's not the father. He has a right to challenge the results. The court tends to err on the side of potential fathers, even when they're dangerous, especially then. They don't want to be accused of bias. Richard knew exactly how to work the system. He'd drive by Blake's house 6 times a day, just under what counted as stalking. He'd show up at the grocery store right after Becky left. Always coincidental, always legal. Day 38, he showed up at my work with 2 large men. They weren't quite blocking the exits, but close enough. Just want to talk, Richard said, hands up like he was being reasonable. My coworkers were watching through the glass conference room walls. I texted Becky to call 911 while keeping Richard talking about anything. The weather, sports, whatever would buy time. You know she's using you, right? Richard said. Soon as this blows over, she'll drop you. You're just a prop. His friends moved closer, not touching me, but close enough that I could smell the cigarettes on their clothes. Detective Dooley suggesting Ryan leave makes me wonder if that actually helped or made things worse. Did Richard get bolder without Ryan there to protect him? The police arrived just as one of them put his hand on my shoulder. They all left without charges, just another misunderstanding. My boss called me into her office afterward. This has to stop, she said. I'm sorry about your situation, but we can't have this at work. Take a leave of absence or find another job. Day 39, the second paternity test also proved Richard wasn't Cassandra's father. His lawyer tried to argue chain of custody again, but the judge had enough. Mr. Thompson, you've had 2 independent tests. Both confirm you're not the biological father. Any further motions on this matter will result in contempt charges. Richard stood up so fast his chair fell over. His lawyer grabbed his arm, whispered something. He stormed out, slamming the courtroom door so hard the bailiff followed him. That night, Blake's house was spray painted with horrible words about Becky. The security cameras had mysteriously stopped working an hour before. Cassandra cried all night, picking up on everyone's stress. Maybe I should just let him see her, Becky said the next morning, exhausted and defeated. Maybe if I give him something, he'll stop. You can't negotiate with someone like him, I told her. It'll never be enough. Detective Dooley came by on day 40. Richard's escalating. Men like him, when they're cornered, they do something extreme. You should consider leaving town. I can't afford to leave, Becky said. I just had a baby. I have no money, no job. Then hotels. Move around. Don't stay in one place. Richard's mother called that evening, crying. Blake put her on speaker. He's drinking, she sobbed. Says if he can't have his family, no one can. I'm scared what he'll do. We packed that night. Found a hotel 20 miles away that took cash. No questions asked. Day 43, Lauren called with bad news. Richard got the baby shower guest list from the venue. Told them he was planning a surprise for Becky. Now everyone from that day was getting calls. Strange cars on their streets. Samantha's gym bag was stolen from her car. The woman who'd held the golf club found her tires slashed. He's punishing everyone who helped me, Becky said. This is my fault. Day 50, 2 in the morning. The hotel fire alarm went off. Everyone stumbled into the parking lot in pajamas and confusion. In the chaos of crying kids and barking dogs, Richard appeared next to Becky. Cute baby, he said, touching Cassandra's head. Then he was gone, disappeared disappeared into the crowd. Hotel security said they had no record of him. No cameras caught him, but we knew he'd been there. He was showing us he could reach them anywhere. That morning, I made a decision. I called Richard directly. Finally ready to talk man to man? He answered on the first ring. Meet me at Riverside Park, 2 o'clock. Just you and me. Growing some balls, hero? Just come alone. I didn't tell Becky. She would have tried to stop me, but something had to change. We couldn't live like this forever. At 2 o'clock, I waited at a picnic table in the middle of the park. Public place, lots of people around. Richard showed up with his 2 friends despite promising to come alone. Insurance, he said, sitting across from me. Now here's the deal. You disappear. Stop playing daddy. I'll leave Becky alone until she realizes she needs me. Women always come back when they have babies. They need the help. And if I don't, then things get worse. Your parents in Modesto, nice house. Your sister teaches 3rd grade, right? Cute kids in her class. I pulled out my phone, showing him it was recording. You just threatened my family on tape. His friends grabbed for it, but I backed away. Other park visitors starting to notice the commotion. You think you're smart? Richard's face was red now. That recording means nothing. I know judges, lawyers. I know how to work the system. Maybe. But it's enough for felony stalking charges when added to everything else. That evening, I gave the recording to Detective Dooley. He listened to it twice, taking notes. Combined with everything else, this might be enough for felony stalking charges. We'll arrest him tomorrow morning. I didn't tell Becky yet. Didn't want to give her false hope if something went wrong. That night, we were back at the hotel. Different one this time, closer to town. Becky and Cassandra were in the bed while I slept on the floor by the door. Around 3 in the morning, I heard something at the adjoining room door, the one that connected our room to the next. The lock clicked. The door opened. Richard stepped through, that knife from the baby shower in his hand. The same one Becky had been using to cut cake when he'd arrived that day. Becky screamed, grabbing Cassandra. Richard went straight for them. I tackled him from the side, and we crashed into the TV stand. The knife went flying. He was strong, trained, but I was bigger and fighting for something that mattered. We rolled across the floor, throwing punches, knocking over furniture. He got his hands around my throat. I kneed him in the stomach. Hotel security burst in just as Richard grabbed the knife again. 3 of them pulled him off me. He was screaming about his rights, his baby, how we'd stolen his life. The police arrived within minutes. This time was different. Breaking and entering. Assault with a deadly weapon. Attempted kidnapping. All on hotel security footage. It's really over? Becky kept asking as she gave her statement, holding Cassandra tight. He can't get bail for this? Not this time, Detective Dooley said. This time he stays locked up. Day 81, Richard's trial. The courthouse was packed with women, not just from the baby shower, but others who'd known him. His ex from 2 years ago flew in from Oregon to testify. She told about months of stalking, about leaving everything behind to escape. One by one, women told their stories. The patterns were all the same. Charming at first, slowly controlling, then violent when they tried to leave. Richard sat there in an orange jumpsuit, no longer looking like a concerned father. His lawyer tried to argue mental health issues from his military service, but the judge wasn't buying it. 8 years in prison. Becky cried with relief when they read the verdict. Cassandra slept through it all in her carrier, safe and oblivious. Day 95, I was moving to a new apartment. My old one felt tainted somehow. Knowing Richard had been there, watched me. Becky and Cassandra came to help unpack. It was awkward. We were thrown together by crisis, and now the crisis was over. You saved our lives, Becky said, holding Cassandra while I assembled a bookshelf. I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to thank me. I do, though. You didn't have to do any of this. You could have walked away that first day. No, I said. I couldn't have. We worked in silence for a while, then Cassandra reached for me from Becky's arms. I took her, and she immediately grabbed my nose, laughing. She likes you, Becky said softly. Day 125, Becky texted me a video of Cassandra laughing at something on TV. We'd been texting more lately. Small things. Normal things. She mentioned she was finally sleeping through the night. I realized I missed them both more than expected. Want to get coffee sometime? I texted back. When you have a sitter? I'd like that, she replied. Day 140, I ran into them at the grocery store. First time we'd accidentally met without planning. Cassandra was in her stroller, playing with a toy. She saw me and immediately reached up, making grabbing motions with her hands. She remembers you, Becky said, smiling. She doesn't do that with everyone. We shopped together without really deciding to. Talking about normal things, the weather, a movie she wanted to see, how Cassandra was starting to crawl. It felt easy, natural. At the checkout, the cashier said, your daughter is adorable. We didn't correct her. Day 147 was Cassandra's first birthday party, this time at Blake's house with real joy instead of fear. The living room was full of people who'd become family through shared trauma. Lauren and Samantha were there, along with other women from that first terrible shower. Your family now, Blake told me, hugging me tight. After everything, your family. Cassandra took her first steps that day, toddling between Becky and me while everyone cheered and took pictures. For a moment, it felt like the happy party this should have been from the start. Then Becky's phone buzzed. Prison call. She looked at the screen, then declined it. He doesn't get to ruin this day, she said. The next morning, Detective Dooley called. Richard had been hurt in a prison fight. He'd tried his controlling behavior on the wrong inmate and ended up in the infirmary. He'd recover, but would be in solitary for a while. Hard to feel sorry for him, Dooley said. It was, but I also felt something else. Relief that he was learning there were consequences, finally, for how he treated people. Day 178, Becky and I were officially dating. It happened slowly, built on shared trauma, but growing into something real. Cassandra called me Rai now, reaching for me whenever I came over. We didn't talk about Richard much, but his shadow was there. And how Becky checked locks twice. How she tensed when trucks that looked like his drove by. How she kept pepper spray in every room. Does it ever go away? She asked one night. The fear? I don't know, I said honestly, but it gets smaller. 2 weeks after that conversation about fear getting smaller, we found out Richard wasn't done with us yet. Not directly, he was still in prison, but through his mother. The process server showed up at Becky's new apartment on a Tuesday morning. Cassandra was eating breakfast, getting mashed banana everywhere, when the knock came. Becky opened the door thinking it was maintenance. Becky Martinez? The guy asked. Yes, he handed her the papers. You've been served. She called me right away, voice shaking. Richard's mother is suing for grandparent rights. The timing of Richard's mother filing for grandparent rights feels pretty calculated to me. Right when they were starting to feel safe again? Her calling them crying about Richard drinking seems different now, knowing she'd turn around and sue them. She wants visitation with Cassandra. I drove over immediately. The papers were thick, full of legal language, but the message was clear. Richard's mother claimed she had a right to see her granddaughter, and that Becky was denying her access out of spite. But the DNA tests, I said, reading through it. Richard isn't even the father. She's claiming emotional bonds, Becky said. Says she prepared for this baby, bought things, that she has an established relationship. What established relationship? She's never even met Cassandra. Blake arrived an hour later with her lawyer. They read through everything, making notes. It's harassment by by proxy, the lawyer said. Richard can't sue from prison, so he's using his mother, but she has no legal standing. The DNA tests are clear. The case was dismissed 3 weeks later. The judge barely let Richard's mother finish talking before shutting it down. But we had to show up, had to pay lawyers, had to relive everything again. Even from prison, Richard found ways to mess with our lives. 6 months passed pretty normally after that. Becky and I fell into routines. Sunday dinners at Blake's house, taking Cassandra to the park, movie nights when we could find a sitter. We were building something real, not based on crisis anymore. Day 360, we were at Riverside Park, the same one where I'd confronted Richard. Cassandra was feeding ducks, throwing bread and squealing when they came close. A man walked toward us from the parking lot. Same height as Richard, same building, similar walk. Becky's whole body went rigid. She grabbed Cassandra, pulling her back. I stepped forward, putting myself between them and the man. My hands were already fisting up. Then the guy called out, "Tommy! Sarah, stop running so far ahead." 2 kids ran past us toward him. Just another dad at the park, not Richard at all. Becky and I looked at each other and started laughing. Not happy laughter, the kind that comes when you realize how messed up you still are. Our hands were shaking. Cassandra looked confused about why we'd stopped feeding ducks. 6 months of therapy and I still do that, Becky said. We both do, I reminded her. That night after Cassandra was asleep, we talked about it. How certain sounds, truck engines revving, doors slamming, still made us jump. How we checked locks multiple times. How we'd probably always carry some part of that fear. But we're getting better, Becky said. Slower than I want, but better. A month later, I knew I wanted to marry Becky. Not because of trauma bonding or shared crisis. Because of how she sang to Cassandra every night, even when exhausted. Because of her terrible jokes that made me laugh anyway. Because of how she was rebuilding her life with such strength. I called Lauren and Samantha to help plan. The baby shower venue, I told them. I want to propose there. That's either really romantic or really weird, Lauren said. Both, I admitted. But that's where everything started, where our real story began. The venue was under new management. The previous owner had sold after too many incidents. The new owner was happy to let us use it for a small gathering. I told Becky we were going to a friend's party. She was suspicious, but went along. When we walked in, the room was full of familiar faces. All the women from that terrible baby shower. Blake, Lauren, Samantha, everyone who'd stood by us. What is this? Becky asked. I got down on one knee right where she'd been opening presents that day, where Richard had walked in and changed everything. We started here with a lie, I said. 2 strangers asking me to pretend to be your boyfriend, to pretend to be Cassandra's father. But somewhere along the way, it stopped being pretend. Cassandra toddled over, probably thinking I was playing a game. She grabbed my shoulder for balance. I love you, I told Becky. I love Cassandra. I love the family we've built from something that should have broken us. Will you marry me? She said yes while crying. Everyone cheered. Cassandra clapped because everyone else was, then asked for a cookie. It was perfect in its imperfection. We got married 3 months later. Small ceremony at Blake's house. The same house where bricks had come through windows, where we'd huddled in fear. Now it was decorated with white flowers and fairy lights. Blake walked Becky down the aisle since her father had passed years ago. You saved my daughter, she whispered to me at the altar. You saved them both. Cassandra was our flower girl, though she mostly just threw petals at people and laughed. Lauren and Samantha stood as Becky's bridesmaids. My college roommate was my best man, still confused about how I'd gone from single to married with a kid in under 2 years. During the vows, I looked at Becky and said, I promise to protect you and Cassandra, to stand between you and any danger, to be the father Cassandra deserves and the husband you need. Becky's vows included, you chose us when you didn't have to. You stayed when it got dangerous. You loved us when we were broken. I promised to choose you back every day. Even the officiant teared up. The reception was in Blake's backyard. No one mentioned Richard, but his absence was its own presence. The security guard at the front gate, Blake had hired him just in case. The way Becky tensed when a car backfired nearby. The pepper spray in her bouquet pocket. But mostly, it was just joy. Cassandra dancing with everyone. Blake crying happy tears. The women from the baby shower telling stories about how they'd picked me out on the street. He just looked safe, Lauren said during her toast. Like someone who'd step up. Turns out we were right. 2.5 years into Richard's sentence, we got the letter. He was up for early release. Good behavior. Completing anger management programs. All the right boxes checked. He's manipulating them, Becky said, crumpling the letter. Just like he manipulated me. We had to testify at the hearing. So did his other victims. The woman from Oregon flew in again. 2 other exes we'd never met showed up. The courtroom was full of women Richard had hurt. One by one, we explained why he shouldn't be released. His patterns, his escalation, how he'd learned to work the system, not change his behavior. Richard sat there in his orange jumpsuit, looking smaller somehow. Prison had aged him. But when he looked at Becky, that same cold anger was there. His mother was in the gallery glaring at us. When the parole was denied, she stood up. You've ruined his life, she screamed at Becky. He loved you. He just wanted his family. Security removed her while she kept yelling about how we'd destroyed her son. Richard watched it all with that same calm smile from the coffee shop. Outside the courthouse, the other women formed a circle around Becky and me. Thank you for stopping him, one said. I never could. We stopped him together, Becky replied. By the time Cassandra started preschool, our life looked almost normal. She was confident, happy, completely unaware of how her life had started. She ran into her classroom that first day without looking back, ready for adventure. She's so brave, Becky said, watching her go. She gets it from you. Becky was pregnant again, planned this time, celebrated from the start. No fear about announcing it, no dread about a baby shower. Blake threw the shower at her house again. Same living room, but everything felt different. The windows had been replaced with reinforced glass. Blake's one concession to the past, but otherwise, it was just joy. Lauren and Samantha were there, of course. They'd become real friends, not just crisis allies. The bonds formed that terrible day had evolved into genuine relationships. Remember when we grabbed Ryan off the street? Samantha said, rubbing Becky's belly. Best random decision ever. Not random, Lauren corrected. We chose him. We're excellent judges of character. The shower was wonderfully boring. No drama, no watching the clock, no one holding golf clubs as weapons, just women eating cake and playing silly games about baby food flavors. When someone knocked on the door, only I tensed. It was just the pizza delivery Blake had ordered. But that moment of fear, it would probably always be there, buried but ready. Our son was born 2 months later. We named him Marcus. Cassandra was fascinated by him, constantly wanting to hold him, feed him, show him her toys. Marcus was 2 when Cassandra started asking harder questions. She was 5, smart, noticing differences other kids talked about. We were teaching her to ride a bike in front of our house. I was running beside her, holding the seat, when she stopped suddenly. Why doesn't Marcus have a different daddy? She asked. Emma at school has 2 daddies, her first daddy and her new daddy. Becky and I had prepared for this, had talked to therapists about how to handle it, but in the moment, all the planning felt useless. Becky knelt down to Cassandra's level. You do have a daddy, she said. The best daddy who chose to love you. But Marcus didn't need choosing. Kids see right through you sometimes. Marcus was born after Daddy and I got married, Becky explained. You were born before, but Daddy loved you so much, he chose to be your daddy even before he knew you. Cassandra thought about this. So I'm special because I was chosen? Exactly, I said. She seemed satisfied with that answer. Okay, can we bike more now? As I ran beside her bike again, holding on then letting go, watching her wobble but stay upright, I thought about that day. Two strangers calling my name, the desperation in their faces. How saying yes to that insane request had changed everything. Richard would be eligible for parole again in 3 years. His mother still sent letters sometimes, though we didn't open them. The trauma would always be part of our story. But watching Cassandra pedal away, laughing and calling for me to watch, I knew we'd won. The way Cassandra asks why Marcus doesn't have a different daddy shows how kids notice patterns in their world. I wonder if she's been thinking about this question for a while, or if it just clicked for her while learning to bike. Not because Richard was in prison, not because we were safe, but because we'd built something beautiful from something terrible. Daddy, look, no hands, Cassandra called, immediately wobbling. I ran to catch her like I always would, like I'd chosen to do from that first day. Sometimes the best families really are the ones you choose, even if the choosing starts with a complete stranger asking you to lie, to pretend, to step into danger you don't understand. I'd make the same choice again, every time. All right, folks, that's gonna do it for today. I had a blast wondering through all this with you, and I hope you enjoyed the questions as much as I did. Like the video, it helps more than you think. Has your teacher ever committed a crime in front of you in class? I was in AP History when Mrs. Linchard pulled out her 3rd bottle of lavender spray that period. I was sitting in the front, meaning the particles hit my face before I could turn away. Within seconds, my chest tightened and my lungs started caving. Mrs. Linchard, please, I wheezed. I told you at the beginning of the year. I'm severely allergic to fragrance. She laughed while spraying another cloud directly at me. Allergic to smell? What's next? Allergic to sound? This is therapeutic-grade essential oil. It's literally medicine. I need to leave, I gasped, already feeling my airways constricting. Sit down, Corey. We have a test in 10 minutes. She walked to her desk and pulled out 2 more bottles, eucalyptus and peppermint. These will help you focus better. My nose started bleeding. Just a drop at first, then a stream. Sasha next to me handed me tissues. Mrs. Linchard, he's bleeding. Detoxification, she said, filling her diffuser with all 3 oils. His body is releasing toxins. This is good for him. I stood up to leave, but she stepped in front of the door. You walk out, you get a 0, and I'll report you for truancy. I can't breathe, I managed, feeling my throat closing. Drama queen. She pulled out a 4th bottle, tea tree oil, the one that sent me to the ER last time. You know what cured my daughter's allergies? Exposure to real wellness, not big pharma poison. Then she did something I'll never forget. She grabbed my backpack, unzipped it, and dumped the entire bottle of tea tree oil inside. On my books, my laptop, everything. The reaction was instant. My eyes swelled shut. Blood poured from my nose onto my desk. My skin felt like it was on fire from the inside. 8 minutes. That's all I had before my throat closed completely. My allergist made me memorize that number. Somebody call 911, Jordan yelled, reaching for his phone. Phone's in the box, Mrs. Linchard screamed. Anyone who touches their phone fails this semester, Lisa was sobbing. You're killing him. I'm healing him. His body is fighting years of toxic buildup. She actually smiled while saying it. That's when Amber touched her face and I noticed her eyes swelling too. I can't. Something's wrong. She collapsed, wheezing. The room erupted. Kids were screaming, trying to open windows that had been painted shut. Mrs. Linchard locked the door with her key. Nobody leaves until you see the healing crisis complete itself. Through my swollen eyes, I saw Mr. Davidson look through the door window. Mrs. Linchard waved him away. Meditation exercise, she mouthed. He nodded and left. This is attempted murder, Jordan screamed. It's aromatherapy. She sprayed more lavender directly into Amber's face. Breathe through the healing. 4 minutes left. My vision was going dark at the edges. Blood and mucus ran down my face. Amber was turning blue on the floor. 3 other kids were having panic attacks, which made their breathing worse in the oil-filled air. Mike grabbed a textbook. I'm breaking the window. That's $500 in damages. Your parents will pay. He threw it anyway. It bounced off. Safety glass. I started crawling toward her desk where she kept the key. Each movement felt like drowning in reverse. Air going out, but nothing coming back in. Look at him. So desperate for attention. She actually laughed. Then she pulled out another diffuser from her cabinet. You know what? Let's make this a real healing session. She poured pure eucalyptus oil on the hot plate she used for her tea. The fumes hit like a wall. 2 more kids started choking. Jordan was trying to break down the door with a desk. Lisa was screaming out the window for help. You're all getting suspended, Mrs. Linchard shrieked. This generation is so weak. I had no idea if we were going to make it out alive. The door crashes open and someone shouts my name, but I can't turn my head to see who it is. Fresh air hits my face, but my throat is too swollen to pull it in. Footsteps pound across the classroom floor. A woman in blue scrubs drops to her knees beside my desk, and I recognize Willow Brock, the school nurse. She has something in her hand, orange and plastic. She yanks up my jeans leg and jabs the auto-injector into my thigh. The click is loud even over all the yelling. She's shouting at someone behind her about dosage and timing. More footsteps, heavier ones, and paramedics in dark uniforms flood into the room. The chemical smell of the oils makes my eyes water, even though they're already swollen almost shut. Willow moves away from me toward the back of the classroom where Amber is still on the floor. I try to track her movement, but my vision is too blurry. Someone touches my wrist, checking for a pulse. The epinephrine hits my system and it feels like lightning in my veins. My airways force open just enough to suck in a tiny breath. It's not enough, but it's something. Another breath, shallow and painful. My chest burns like someone poured acid down my throat. Willow is kneeling over Amber now with another injector. Amber's lips are blue and she's not moving. A male voice near the door is loud and firm. I recognize Colby Jennings, the school resource officer. He's blocking someone from coming back in. Mrs. Lynchard's voice cuts through everything else, shrill and angry. She's screaming about healing crises and detox reactions. Colby tells her to step back now, in a tone that means he's not asking. The paramedic beside me straps an oxygen mask over my face. The elastic pulls at my swollen skin, but I don't care because oxygen is flowing and I can breathe a little better. He's talking to his partner about starting an IV line. I feel the tourniquet go tight around my arm, then the sting of the needle sliding in. Through the plastic mask, I can see Mrs. Lynchard being walked toward the door by Colby. Her hands are gesturing wildly and she's still talking. Something about how we're all poisoned by Big Pharma, and if we just let the oils work, we'd be healed. The small black camera on Colby's chest is pointed right at her, recording every word. I file that detail away even though my brain feels foggy. Evidence. That's evidence. Jordan appears in my line of sight and squeezes my shoulder before the paramedics start wheeling me toward the door on a gurney I don't remember being put on. His face is white like paper, and his eyes look guilty somehow, like he thinks he should have done more. Lisa is still at the window talking to another officer who must have arrived as backup. Her face is streaked with tears and snot, and she keeps pointing at Mrs. Lynchard. The hallway is bright after the dim classroom. Students are pressed against the walls watching as they wheel me past. Some of them are crying, others are filming on their phones. Mrs. Lynchard's voice echoes from somewhere behind us, getting fainter as we move away. The paramedic adjusts something on the oxygen mask, and my breathing gets a tiny bit easier. Outside, the air is cold and clean. No oil smell. They lift the gurney into the ambulance and one paramedic climbs in with me while the other goes to the front. The doors slam shut. The paramedic leans over me and adjusts the oxygen flow. She asks how long I was exposed to the oils. I try to answer, but my voice comes out as a rasp. 8 minutes. That's all I manage before my throat closes up again, and I can't make any more sound. Her expression changes, tightens up. She grabs the radio and calls ahead to the emergency room. I catch words like severe reaction and protocol and possible airway compromise. The ambulance starts moving and the siren wails above us. She's starting another IV line, pushing something through it. She tells me it's antihistamines to help with the swelling. My arm feels cold where the medicine goes in. The ride feels like it takes forever, but probably it's only minutes. I keep my eyes on the ceiling of the ambulance, counting the small holes in the panels to stay conscious. The paramedic keeps checking my pulse and looking at the monitor beside me. When we stop, she says we're here and the back door's open. Bright lights, hospital smell, that clean chemical scent that's nothing like the oils but still makes my chest tight. They're wheeling me fast through automatic doors. People in scrubs are waiting, lots of them. They move me from the gurney to a bed in one smooth motion. Someone cuts my shirt off with scissors. Monitors start beeping as they attach things to my chest. A doctor leans over me, shining a light in my eyes. He's talking to the nurses about starting high-dose steroids to prevent rebound swelling. I don't know what that means, but it sounds bad. In the next room, or maybe 2 rooms over, I hear voices rising in panic. That's Amber's parents. I'd recognize her mom's voice anywhere from all the school events. She's crying and asking if her daughter is okay. Nobody answers her in a way I can hear. My parents burst through the doors and Mom's face is streaked with tears. She's saying my name over and over. Dad is right behind her, his hands shaking as he grabs the bed rail. The school must have called them, but whatever they said didn't prepare them for this. I'm hooked up to oxygen and IVs, and my face is crusted with dried blood. Mom tries to touch my face, but a nurse gently moves her hand away. Dad is staring at all the monitors like he's trying to understand what each number means. A doctor in a white coat sits down in the chair between them. He introduces himself, but I miss his name. He asks me to tell him what happened, and I try, but my voice is barely a whisper. The doctor leans in close to hear. I describe the classroom, the oils, the locked door. When I get to the part about Mrs. Lynchard pouring tea tree oil directly into my backpack, Mom's face changes from scared to something else. Furious. Dad pulls out his phone and starts taking notes, typing fast with his thumbs. His jaw is clenched, so tight I can see the muscles jumping. The doctor explains about the treatment plan, the steroids, the monitoring. He says I'm lucky Willow got to me when she did. Another few minutes and my airway would have closed completely. 3 hours pass in a blur of nurses checking vitals and adjusting medications. I drift in and out, exhausted but too anxious to really sleep. Willow appears in the doorway of my ER bay, still wearing her school nurse scrubs. She pulls up a chair next to my parents. Her voice is quiet but steady as she tells them about the incident report she filed. She's been warning Mrs. DeLynchard about fragrance-free classrooms since the start of the school year. She documented every conversation, every complaint from students, every time Mrs. Lynchard dismissed the concerns. Her hands are twisting a tissue into shreds while she talks. Dad adds this to his notes. 4 hours after we arrived, Principal Margot Cleveland shows up. She has her concerned administrator face on, the one she uses at the school assemblies. She starts talking about unfortunate misunderstandings and well-intentioned teachers who made mistakes. Dad cuts her off mid-sentence with a flat recitation of facts from his phone notes. The times, the warnings, the locked door, the deliberate exposure. Principal Cleveland's expression shifts. The concern disappears and something defensive takes its place. She retreats behind phrases like pending investigation and can't discuss personnel matters. Mom asks when they plan to press charges. Principal Cleveland blinks like she didn't expect that question. She says the district will handle it internally. Dad says that's not good enough and asks if she's aware that Colby's body cam recorded everything. The principal's face goes pale. She excuses herself, saying she needs to make some calls and leaves without looking back at any of us. About an hour later, Colby comes back to my ER bay, his uniform still crisp despite the chaos he dealt with. He pulls up the same chair Principal Cleveland sat in and takes out a small notebook. Dad sits up straighter, phone ready to take more notes. Colby explains he needs my statement while everything is fresh, and he keeps his voice calm and professional like he's done this 1,000 times. I walk him through the whole thing again, my voice still raspy from the swelling. The 3 spray bottles at the start, then the 4th one with tea tree oil, then her dumping the whole bottle into my backpack. The locked door, her blocking kids from calling for help. Colby writes it all down in careful print, asking specific questions about timing and exact words she used. When I get to the part about her pouring oil on the hot plate, his pen pauses for just a second. He asks if I'm sure about that detail, and I nod, remembering the wall of fumes that hit when she did it. Dad mentions the other kids who got sick too, especially Amber, and Colby adds that to his notes. Then he does something that makes the whole thing feel suddenly real in a different way. He tells us his body cam was recording from the moment he entered that hallway. He captured Mrs. Lynchard's statements about healing and detox, her blocking the door when he ordered her to open it, the whole classroom full of choking kids. The footage shows everything. He explains this isn't just a school discipline issue anymore. With the body cam evidence and the medical records from me and Amber, the district attorney's office will probably want to file criminal charges. Dad's hand tightens on his phone. Colby pulls out a business card and hands it to Dad, saying to call if we have questions or need anything. He stands up to leave but pauses at the curtain. He tells me I did the right thing trying to protect myself and that what happened wasn't my fault. After he's gone, Dad stares at the business card for a long time, his jaw working like he's trying not to say something angry in front of me. The nurses moved me to a regular room around 9 that night. They want to keep me overnight for observation since my reaction was so bad. Mom stays in the chair next to my bed while Dad goes home to get us both clean clothes and my phone charger. The room is quiet except for the beeping monitors and voices in the hallway. A nurse comes in every 2 hours to check my breathing, shining a light in my eyes and listening to my lungs with a cold stethoscope. She adjusts my IV medications each time, typing notes into a computer on a rolling cart. I drift in and out of sleep, exhausted but too wired to really rest. Every time I start to sink deeper, something jerks me awake. A nurse walking past with hand sanitizer that smells like chemicals. A cleaning cart in the hallway with disinfectant. Someone's flowers 2 rooms down that I can smell even through my closed door. Each time my heart races and my chest tightens before my brain catches up and reminds me I'm safe now. The oils are gone. Mrs. Lynchard is gone. I can leave if I need to. But my body doesn't believe it yet. Around 4 in the morning, I wake up gasping from a dream where I'm back in that classroom, crawling toward the desk while the door stays locked. Mom is right there, her hand on my arm, telling me to breathe slow and count with her. 1, 2, 3, 4, hold. 1, 2, 3, 4, out. We do it 5 times before my heart rate drops back to normal on the monitor. Morning comes with breakfast I can't eat and a doctor checking my chart. My throat is still raw and my eyes are puffy, but the worst of the swelling has gone down. The doctor orders another breathing treatment and says if my levels stay stable, I can go home this afternoon. Around 10, my phone starts buzzing on the bedside table where Dad plugged it in. I have 17 missed calls and 43 texts. Most of them are from classmates asking if I'm okay, but 3 are from my allergist's office. Before I can call back, my phone rings with a video call from a number I recognize. I answer, and Arav's face fills the screen, his office visible behind him with its wall of medical charts and that poster about immune responses. He doesn't do the usual doctor greeting. His face is tight with anger as he tells me the hospital forwarded my case notes to him an hour ago. He's looking at the exposure details right now and he's furious. He leans closer to the camera and explains that tea tree oil is one of the most dangerous triggers for people with my specific sensitivities. The molecular structure causes immediate airway constriction, and the fumes are concentrated enough to cause reactions even without direct contact. He asks how much was used, and I tell him about the whole bottle poured into my backpack, plus what she put on the hot plate. His expression gets even darker. He starts typing on his keyboard, telling me he's sending comprehensive written restrictions to the school right now. Not suggestions, requirements. He's also drafting 504 plan documentation that legally mandates fragrance-free accommodations in all my classes. He promises to have everything submitted by end of business today, and he uses words like federal disability law and mandatory compliance that make it sound serious. Before he hangs up, he tells me to rest and that he wants to see me in his office next week for updated lung function tests. About an hour before they discharge me, there's a soft knock on the door. Amber's parents come in looking exhausted and worried. Her mom's eyes are red like she's been crying for hours. They stand at the foot of my bed, awkward and uncertain, until Dad offers them the extra chairs. Her dad thanks me for trying to warn Mrs. Lynchard at the start, for speaking up even when she wouldn't listen. Her mom's voice breaks when she apologizes that Amber didn't say something sooner about feeling sick. She explains that Amber was scared of getting in trouble, of Mrs. Lynchard calling her dramatic like she did with other kids who complained about the oils. Now Amber is 2 floors up, still hospitalized because her reaction was bad enough that they're keeping her longer. Her mom reaches over and squeezes my hand, telling me there's a shared understanding between us now. We're survivors of the same thing, something that should never have happened. Her dad mentions they're meeting with a lawyer tomorrow. After they leave, Mom sits on the edge of my bed and we don't talk for a while. There's nothing to say that makes any of this better. I get home around 4 in the afternoon and immediately check my phone. The school sent a district-wide email 2 hours ago with the subject line, Classroom Incident Update. I open it and feel my face get hot reading the sanitized version they put out. They call it a diffuser accident and an unfortunate reaction to aromatherapy. There's nothing about Mrs. Lynchard locking the door. Nothing about her pouring oil directly into my backpack or onto a hot plate. Nothing about Amber collapsing or kids screaming for help. Just smooth corporate language about student wellness and ongoing review of classroom practices. My phone starts buzzing nonstop with texts from classmates who were actually there. Lisa sends 3 messages in all caps about how the email is complete lies. Mike texts that he can't believe they're trying to cover this up. Jordan sends me a screenshot of the email with a message saying this is garbage, followed by an invitation to a group chat he just created. The chat is titled, What Actually Happened, and there are already 12 people in it. Messages are flying as people share their anger at the school's version of events. Jordan pins a message at the top saying we need to document everything before the district tries to make it disappear. The weekend passes in a blur of documentation. I spend Saturday afternoon going through my backpack and the stuff that was inside it. Everything reeks of tea tree oil, that sharp medicinal smell that makes my chest tight even now. My backpack itself is ruined, the fabric stained and warped where the oil soaked through. My laptop screen has a crack running diagonal across it from the oil seeping into the case. The logic textbook's pages are warped and stuck together. My history notes are unreadable, the ink bleeding into brown smears. Dad sets up his phone on a tripod and photographs each item with a ruler next to it for scale, creating a detailed record of the damage. He takes shots from multiple angles, zooming in on the oil stains and the cracked laptop screen. Mom is at the kitchen table with her laptop, researching lawyers who handle school negligence cases. She's making a spreadsheet with names, specialties, and initial consultation fees. Every few minutes, she reads out a potential attorney's credentials and asks if we think they sound qualified. The house smells faintly of tea tree oil from my ruined belongings, enough that I have to use my inhaler twice. We bag everything in sealed plastic and store it in the garage where I won't have to smell it. The group chat Jordan started fills up with evidence Sunday morning. People are uploading photos they took during and after the incident. Lisa posts a picture of my blood on the front desk, dark red against the fake wood surface. Someone else shares a photo of Amber collapsed on the floor, her face visible and clearly in distress. Mike uploads photos of the multiple oil bottles lined up on Mrs. Lynchard's desk, at least 6 different kinds visible in the shot. Then Mike posts something that makes everyone stop typing for a minute. It's a video, shaky and filmed from a low angle like he was holding his phone under his desk. The footage shows Mrs. Lynchard standing at the front of the room, lavender spray bottle in hand. I'm visible at my desk in the front row, blood already running from my nose onto tissues. She raises the bottle and sprays it directly at me while I'm trying to wipe the blood away. The audio captures her saying something about detoxification and my body releasing toxins. The video is only 40 seconds long, but it's completely damning. Jordan immediately downloads it and says he's backing it up to 3 different cloud services. Other people start doing the same, creating redundant copies so nothing can be lost. Dad comes into my room and asks to see the video. I show him and watch his face go hard and angry. He takes his phone out and starts texting Mom even though she's just downstairs. Monday morning, I try to get ready for school, but my hands shake putting on my shirt. My lungs feel tight and reactive to every scent, noticing things I usually ignore. Dad's coffee, Mom's lotion, the laundry detergent on my clothes. Everything feels like a potential threat now. I make it as far as the kitchen before I have to sit down, my breathing getting shallow and fast. Mom calls the school and tells them I won't be in today. Around 10, my phone rings with Arav's office number. He's calling in a prescription for a rescue inhaler to the pharmacy near our house, something stronger than my regular one for emergencies. He wants to see me Wednesday afternoon for an emergency appointment to update my action plan. His voice is still tight with anger from our video call Friday. Before he hangs up, he mentions something that makes my stomach drop. He's currently treating 2 other students from my school for fragrance-related reactions this year. Both of them had issues in classrooms where teachers used essential oils or strong perfumes. He didn't connect it to Anderson until my case came through. Now he's wondering how many kids have been affected that he doesn't know about. Tuesday afternoon, River Walden arrives at our house with a leather briefcase and sharp focus in her eyes. Mom set up the dining room table with all our documentation spread out in organized piles. River sits down and starts reviewing everything, asking Dad to walk her through the timeline while she takes notes on a legal pad. She nods at certain points, marking things with asterisks and question marks. When Dad shows her the video Mike recorded of Mrs. Lynchard spraying me while I'm bleeding, River stops writing. She watches it 3 times, her expression getting more serious with each viewing. Then she closes her laptop and looks at all 3 of us. She tells us we have a strong case, both for civil damages and for forcing policy changes at the school. The body cam footage, the medical records, the witness statements, and especially that video, create a clear picture of negligence and deliberate harm. She explains that Mrs. Lynchard's actions went beyond poor judgment into reckless endangerment. The school's failure to act on prior complaints adds institutional negligence to the mix. River asks detailed questions about my medical history, the warnings I gave at the start of the year, and any documentation we have of previous incidents. Mom pulls out a folder with copies of my 504 plan from last year, Arav's medical letters and emails I sent to Mrs. Lynchard in September about my allergies. River photographs each document with her phone, building her case file. River explains that we need to act fast to preserve evidence before the district can lose anything convenient. She's seen it happen before where crucial footage gets accidentally deleted or emails disappear from servers during routine maintenance. She opens her laptop right there at our dining room table and starts drafting a legal preservation letter. She types quickly, barely looking at the keyboard, while explaining what she's including. The letter will require the school district to retain all security camera footage from the incident, all emails mentioning Mrs. Lynchard or essential oils, all incident reports filed by staff, and all personnel files related to Mrs. Lynchard, including prior complaints. She adds a section about preserving the body cam footage and any 911 call recordings. The letter includes language about spoliation of evidence and legal consequences for destroying materials relevant to anticipated litigation. She finishes the draft in 20 minutes, reads it aloud to us for approval, and then pulls out her phone to call her office assistant. She instructs them to format the letter on firm letterhead, prepare it for certified mail with return receipt requested, and get it in the mail first thing Wednesday morning. She wants documentation that the district received it and when. Before she leaves, River tells us not to post anything on social media and to tell our friends in the group chat to keep their evidence private for now. We don't want to give the district's lawyers any ammunition to claim we're trying the case in public opinion. Wednesday evening, my phone rings with the school's main number. Mom answers on speaker, and Principal Cleveland's voice comes through with a completely different tone than her defensive hospital visit. She talks about student safety and thorough review, emphasizing how seriously the district takes these matters. The words sound scripted, like someone higher up told her to stop fighting us. She explains they're assigning an investigator named Jason Castillo to interview everyone involved in the incident. He'll be reaching out soon to schedule interviews with me and the other students. Cleveland keeps using phrases like comprehensive investigation and full transparency that feel hollow after weeks of her trying to minimize everything. When she hangs up, Dad looks at Mom with raised eyebrows. Something changed. Someone above Cleveland's level must have seen River's preservation letter and realized they couldn't keep treating this like a minor discipline issue. Thursday morning, Jason calls my cell phone directly. His voice is calm and professional as he explains the investigation process and asks about scheduling my interview for next week. I tell him I need to check with my attorney, and he doesn't sound surprised. River calls back 20 minutes later after I text her. She walks me through what to expect during the interview, emphasizing that I should stick to observable facts and avoid guessing about Mrs. Lynchard's intentions or motivations. She tells me to describe what I saw, heard, and experienced without editorializing. River will attend the interview with me since this involves potential legal action. She reminds me that honesty is crucial, but so is precision. Don't minimize what happened, but don't exaggerate either. Just tell exactly what occurred in sequence. Friday, I decide to try going back to the school. Mom drives me and parks in the student lot. I'm walking toward the main entrance when someone's perfume drifts past on the morning breeze. My chest immediately tightens. The smell is floral and chemical, and my body doesn't care that it's not the same oils Mrs. Lynchard used. My vision starts tunneling, dark edges creeping in. I can't get enough air. My hands are shaking as I fumble for my inhaler, but I'm frozen in the parking lot, gasping, convinced I'm back in that locked classroom. The panic takes over completely. I'm going to die right here. Juliet McLemore, the school counselor, finds me bent over next to my car, hyperventilating. She guides me to sit on the curb and talks me through grounding techniques in a steady voice. Name 5 things I can see, 4 things I can touch, 3 things I can hear, 2 things I can smell, 1 thing I can taste. The method pulls me back gradually until my breathing slows and the parking lot comes back into focus. Juliet sits with me for 15 minutes, making sure I'm stable, before suggesting we reschedule my return for another day. Juliet sets me up with twice-weekly counseling sessions starting the following week. She teaches me the full 5-4-3-2-1 grounding method, and we practice it several times in her office. She explains that panic attacks are normal after trauma, and my body is trying to protect me from perceived danger. We work on recognizing the difference between actual threats and trauma responses. Before I leave, Juliet mentions something that surprises me. She's now documenting every fragrance-related incident that happens on campus, building an Anderson record of how widespread this problem actually is. There's careful anger in her voice when she talks about it, like she's been fighting this battle longer than I knew, and finally has ammunition to force changes. She tells me I'm not alone in dealing with fragrance reactions at the school. She just never had a case severe enough to break through the administration's resistance until mine. The weekend brings nightmares that jolt me awake, gasping. I dream about locked doors and choking on oil fumes while Mrs. Lynchard laughs. I dream about trying to open windows that won't budge while my throat closes. I dream about bleeding onto my desk while everyone watches and no one helps. Each time I wake up, I have to check that my bedroom window's open, that I can actually get out if I need to. I test the window locks twice, 3 times, making sure they slide freely. Mom finds me doing this at 2 a.m. Saturday and doesn't ask questions. She just pulls the chair from my desk over to my bedside and settles in with a blanket like she used to when I was little and sick. Sunday night, she's back in the chair before I even ask. I fall asleep listening to her quiet breathing, the sound reminding me I'm safe. Monday, I make it to campus with Mom walking beside me. She stays until first period starts and everything seems okay. Second period, I'm in English when my teacher pulls out scented hand lotion and rubs it into her hands. The smell hits me and my chest immediately tightens. I raise my hand to ask to leave, but my breathing is already getting shallow and fast. The teacher sees my face and sends me straight to the nurse without questions. Willow has oxygen ready before I even sit down. She fits the mask over my face and documents the incident on her computer while I breathe. Her expression is grim as she notes this is the 3rd fragrance incident she's logged since my ER visit. She tells me she's forwarding all these reports to the district compliance office and my 504 coordinator. The Anderson is undeniable now. Mom picks me up an hour later and we drive home in silence. The 504 meeting happens Tuesday morning in Principal Cleveland's conference room. Cleveland sits at the head of the table with Willow on one side and a district compliance officer on the other. My teachers attend via video call. River arrives with Arav's updated medical documentation requiring fragrance-free classrooms as a reasonable accommodation under federal disability law. Cleveland keeps saying phrases like, "We'll try our best," and "not always feasible to control," while River calmly references specific sections of the Americans with Disabilities Act. The compliance officer takes notes and asks questions about what accommodations are medically necessary versus preferred. River presents Arav's letter explaining that fragrance exposure causes immediate respiratory distress and potential anaphylaxis for me. This isn't a preference or sensitivity. It's a documented medical condition requiring environmental modifications. Cleveland's resistance visibly weakens when River mentions that failure to provide reasonable accommodations could result in a federal complaint and investigation. They finally agree to implement fragrance-free policies for all my classes, but refuse campus-wide changes. The compliance officer drafts a plan requiring my teachers to announce the fragrance-free policy at the start of each semester and provide alternate seating arrangements if a student refuses to comply with the restriction. Students who repeatedly violate the policy can be removed from my classes. It's less protection than I actually need, but more than the school wanted to give. River accepts the compromise while making clear this is the minimum acceptable accommodation and will be monitoring implementation closely. Cleveland signs off on the 504 plan modifications, and the compliance officer promises to follow up with my teachers directly about enforcement procedures. I leave the meeting knowing I have some protection now, but also knowing it depends entirely on teachers actually following through. Wednesday afternoon, Jason interviews me in a district office conference room with River sitting beside me. He's maybe 40 with a notepad and calm expression that gives nothing away. I walk him through everything starting from the beginning of the school year when I first warned Mrs. Lynchard about my allergies. I describe each escalation, the increasing oil use, the day she poured tea tree oil in my backpack. I explain the locked door, her statements about healing and detox, the other students who got sick. Jason takes notes without interrupting, and his pen moves steadily across the page. When I mention Mr. Davidson looking through the door window and Mrs. Lynchard waving him away, Jason's pen pauses for just a second. He asks pointed questions about whether Mrs. Lynchard had been warned before that day. I tell him about my emails from September, my verbal reminders, Willow's conversations with her about fragrance-free accommodations. He notes all of it. The interview lasts 90 minutes, and by the end, I'm exhausted from reliving every detail. Thursday. Jordan texts me that Jason interviewed him, and he told everything, including showing the video he recorded. Lisa texts that she gave a statement about Mrs. Lynchard's previous rants in class about chemical sensitivity being fake and big pharma conspiracies. Over the next few hours, I get messages from other classmates saying they talked to the investigator too. Mike described trying to break the window. Amber's statement covered her own reaction and hospitalization. Sasha talked about handing me tissues while I bled. The investigator is interviewing all 28 students who were in that classroom, building a comprehensive picture of what happened from multiple perspectives. Each statement adds another piece of evidence showing this wasn't a misunderstanding or accident. Mrs. Lynchard deliberately ignored warnings, locked us in, and continued using oils even while students were having medical emergencies. The investigation is finally documenting the full scope of what she did. Friday afternoon, Amber's mom calls my parents and asks if we can meet that evening. We drive to their house and sit in their living room while Amber stays upstairs. Her mom's hands shake as she tells us that Amber is still having trouble breathing, waking up from nightmares about being locked in that classroom. She pulls out a folder of emails and shows us messages she sent to Mrs. Lynchard back in September, warning her that Amber gets bad headaches and breathing problems from strong scents. Mrs. Lynchard responded with links to essential oil detox protocols and said the oils would actually help Amber's sensitivity. Her mom sent 2 more emails asking her to stop using diffusers during Amber's class period, and Mrs. Lynchard ignored both of them. We're not the first students she hurt, just the ones who ended up in the hospital. Amber's parents want to file a joint complaint with us, and River agrees to represent both families. This isn't an isolated incident anymore, it's a Anderson. I spend the weekend at my laptop searching through school board meeting minutes and district records that River showed me how to access. 3 different parents complained last year about Mrs. Lynchard's essential oil use causing headaches and respiratory problems in their kids. One mom wrote that her son came home with nosebleeds twice in 1 week. Another parent said her daughter missed school because the classroom gave her migraines. All 3 complaints were filed with Principal Cleveland, and the responses are identical corporate language about reviewing the concern and addressing with the teacher. Nothing actually changed. Cleveland dismissed every complaint as personal preference rather than safety issue. River adds all of this to our evidence file with notes about how the district knew there was a problem and chose to ignore it. The Anderson shows institutional failure, not just one teacher going rogue. Monday morning, I'm eating breakfast when Mom shows me an email that came through the parent portal. Mrs. Lynchard's union representative filed a grievance about her being placed on administrative leave. The statement argues she was implementing wellness practices consistent with her personal teaching philosophy and didn't intend harm to any students. My hands start shaking so bad I have to put down my phone. The grievance treats my near death like a difference of opinion, like she was teaching evolution and some parents disagreed. There's no mention of the locked door, the ignored warnings, the other kids who got sick, just language about her rights as an educator and the district's hasty response to an unfortunate situation. River texts me not to respond publicly, but she's already drafting a counterstatement for the district about how this wasn't teaching philosophy. It was criminal negligence. Tuesday afternoon, a reporter from the local news station calls my parents asking about the essential oil incident at the high school. Someone leaked the story, probably one of the parents from our class who's fed up with the district's silence. The reporter asks specific questions about what happened in the classroom, how many students were affected, whether there were prior complaints. River texts immediately telling us to give no comment while the investigation is active. But the reporter's questions make it clear she already talked to multiple families and has enough information to run the story anyway. She knows about the locked door, the hospitalizations, the previous parent complaints that were ignored. The story is getting out whether we participate or not. Wednesday morning, the news story runs online with the headline, "Student Hospitalized After Classroom Aromatherapy Incident." They use careful language about a student having a severe allergic reaction during class and an ongoing district investigation. They don't name me or Mrs. Lynchard, but they include quotes from anonymous parents about how they complained before, and nothing was done. One parent is quoted saying their child still has headaches months later. Another talks about feeling dismissed when they raised safety concerns. The story makes the district look negligent without us saying anything. By lunch, the article has hundreds of comments, split between people horrified by what happened and essential oil defenders saying we're all overreacting to natural medicine. River forwards the article to the district attorney and the school board with a note that this is now public record. Principal Cleveland sends an email to all parents Wednesday evening with the subject line, "Student Wellness and Air Quality." The message talks about the district's commitment to reviewing air quality policies and ensuring student wellness in all learning environments. There's no mention of essential oils specifically, no acknowledgement of what actually happened, no accountability for ignoring prior complaints. The corporate speak feels like they're erasing what we survived, turning our locked room crisis into a vague policy discussion. She ends with reassurance that student safety is the district's top priority, which rings completely hollow when they were ignored 3 parents' complaints last year. I forward the email to River, who responds with one word: unacceptable. Thursday morning, River texts that the school board added air quality and student safety procedures to next week's meeting agenda. She explains this is the district's attempt to get ahead of liability by showing proactive response to the news coverage. If they implement new policies now, they can argue they took swift corrective action. River says this is actually our opportunity because board meetings have public comment periods, and everything said becomes part of the official record. She comes over Thursday evening and helps me draft a 2-minute statement. We work through 5 versions, cutting out emotion and sticking to facts. She teaches me to make eye contact with each board member, to pause after key points for emphasis, to keep my voice steady even when describing the worst moments. This is my chance to create public record of exactly what happened before they bury it in policy language about air quality monitoring. I practice the statement all weekend with River sitting across from me, timing each run-through. She coaches me on where to pause, which board members to look at during specific sentences, how to keep my breathing controlled when I describe being locked in while choking on oil fumes. We practice in front of my parents, and they both cry the first time I get through it without my voice shaking. River makes me do it 12 more times until I can deliver the facts calmly, until the words feel separate from the terror I felt living through it. She explains that emotional testimony gets dismissed as dramatic, but factual testimony delivered calmly is damning. I need to sound like someone reporting events, not reliving trauma, even though inside I'm doing both. By Sunday night, I can recite the statement without notes and maintain eye contact throughout. This is my shot to make them hear what they allowed to happen. Monday morning, my phone rings and it's Amber. She's crying so hard I can barely understand her at first. Her parents decided she shouldn't speak at the board meeting. They're worried about retaliation affecting her grades and college applications. They're worried other parents will recognize her and she'll become the face of this incident. They're worried Mrs. Lynchard's supporters will target her online. Amber feels terrible, but she's too scared to go through with it. I tell her I understand, that I'm not mad, that she needs to do what's right for her. But after we hang up, I sit in my car in the school parking lot feeling completely alone in this fight. Amber's parents are filing the joint complaint, but she won't be there Tuesday night to show the board that this affected multiple students. It'll just be me standing up there, and part of me wonders if that makes it easier for them to dismiss as one kid's bad experience rather than an Anderson of harm. Tuesday night, the board meeting room is packed with parents, teachers, and community members who saw the news coverage. I sit in the front row between Mom and Dad with River on Dad's other side. The board works through routine business approving budget transfers and facility maintenance contracts, while my prepared statement feels like it's burning a hole in my pocket. I watch the board members shuffling papers and checking phones, barely paying attention to the procedural votes. Principal Cleveland sits in the administrative section looking composed and professional. The room is too warm and smells like coffee and someone's flowery perfume that makes my chest tighten slightly. River squeezes my hand once when she notices me starting to panic. I use the grounding technique Juliet taught me, counting 5 things I can see, 4 things I can hear. The board president finally announces they're moving to public comment, and my heart starts racing for real. I force myself to stand when the board president announces public comment period. My legs feel weak as I walk to the microphone at the front of the room. Mom squeezes my hand before I leave our row. The microphone is too tall and I have to adjust it down, the screech of metal making everyone wince. I grip the podium edge to stop my hands from shaking. I state my name clearly, then my school, then take a breath. The words I practiced come out steady as I describe what Mrs. Lynchard did that day. I tell them about the warnings I gave at the start of the year about my severe allergies. I describe her laughing when I asked her to stop spraying. I explain how she blocked the door when I tried to leave. I detail the tea tree oil she poured directly into my backpack while I was bleeding from my nose. My voice stays calm as I describe my throat closing, my vision going dark, 8 minutes until complete airway closure. I mention Amber collapsing, other students choking, the locked door while we begged for help. I describe Mrs. Lynchard spraying more oils while students screamed for emergency services. 2 minutes of facts delivered without emotion, just truth about what happened in that classroom. When I finish, the room is completely silent. Nobody moves or speaks. I walk back to my seat on shaking legs and sit down between my parents. The board president clears his throat and thanks me for my comments in a stiff voice. He calls the next speaker, some parent wanting to talk about the parking lot. But I watch the board members and see them looking at each other with tight expressions. The woman on the far left is wiping her eyes with a tissue. Another board member is writing notes fast on his paper. The parent finishes talking about parking, and the president asks if there are more public comments. Nobody else stands up. The president announces they need to go into closed session to discuss personnel and legal matters. He says the meeting will resume in approximately 1 hour. River leans over and squeezes my shoulder. She whispers that we did what we came to do. We got it on the record. The board members stand and file out through a side door. The audience starts talking in low voices. Some people look at me with sympathy. Others look uncomfortable like they want to leave. Mom hugs me tight and Dad tells me I did great, that I was brave and clear. We go outside to wait while the board talks behind closed doors about what they heard. Jason finishes his investigation report the week after the board meeting. River gets a copy through her discovery requests and comes to our house to walk us through what he found. She spreads the report across our dining room table, pages and pages of documentation. Jason interviewed 26 students from that class, and all of them back up my account of what happened. He got copies of Colby's body cam footage from that day. He collected incident reports that Willow filed about Mrs. Lynchard's oil use. He found the parent complaints from last year that Principal Cleveland ignored. 3 different families had complained about their kids having headaches and breathing problems from Mrs. Lynchard's classroom oils. Cleveland marked all 3 complaints as resolved with a note about discussing wellness practices with the teacher. But the complaints kept coming and nothing actually changed. Jason's conclusion section recommends immediate termination and referral to law enforcement for criminal charges. River taps the conclusion with her finger and says, "This is exactly what we needed." The investigation proves a Anderson of ignored warnings and dangerous behavior. She explains this makes the district liable for allowing it to continue after multiple red flags. River pulls up the body cam footage on her laptop so we can see what the evidence shows. The video starts with Colby running down the hallway toward Mrs. Lynchard's classroom. You can hear students screaming from inside even before he reaches the door. He tries the handle, but it's locked. He pounds on the door and identifies himself as school security. Through the door window, you can see Mrs. Lynchard standing in front of the door. The audio picks up her voice saying something about a meditation exercise. Colby orders her to open the door immediately. She shakes her head and mouths something about a healing crisis. The camera shows her turning away from the door and spraying more oils toward where students are visible. Colby's voice gets harder as he commands her again to unlock the door. She refuses, and you can hear her saying that we need to complete the detox process. Students are screaming in the background about not being able to breathe. Amber's wheezing is clearly audible on the recording. My own labored breathing sounds terrible, like I'm drowning in air. Colby finally gets the door open with the custodian's master key, and the camera shows the chaos inside. Kids are crying and choking. I'm on the floor near Mrs. Lynchard's desk, covered in blood. Amber is blue on the floor. The diffusers are running and oil bottles are everywhere. Mrs. Lynchard is still holding a spray bottle when Colby enters. The footage is devastating because it captures everything she did and said. Colby forwards his incident report and the body cam footage to the district attorney's intake division 2 days after Jason completes his investigation. River explains that the DA's office will review everything to decide if criminal charges are appropriate. We wait a week before River calls to say the DA is filing charges. They decided on reckless endangerment, which is a misdemeanor that can carry jail time and requires a review of her teaching license. River explains this over the phone while I'm doing homework. She says reckless endangerment is easier to prove than felony assault because they don't have to show Mrs. Lynchard intended to hurt us. They just have to prove she knew her actions were dangerous and did them anyway. The evidence clearly shows she was warned multiple times about my allergies and other students' sensitivities. She knew I had been hospitalized before from tea tree oil. She was told to stop using fragrances in class. She did it anyway and locked us in while we were having medical emergencies. River says the DA thinks this is a strong case that will likely end in a guilty plea. The district formally places Mrs. Lynchard on unpaid administrative leave the same day the charges are filed. Her union representative releases a statement to the local news about rush to judgment and a dedicated educator being persecuted. The statement says Mrs. Lynchard has served students for 15 years and was implementing wellness practices to help students focus. It mentions her excellent teaching record and parent testimonials. The online comments on the news article split into 2 camps. Some people defend essential oils and claim I must be lying about my allergies. They post about how oils are natural medicine, and schools should encourage wellness practices. Other parents are horrified and share their own stories about teachers ignoring medical accommodations. One mom writes that her daughter had a seizure after a teacher refused to turn off flashing lights despite doctor's orders. Another parent describes a diabetic kid whose teacher wouldn't let him eat when his blood sugar dropped. The comment section becomes a war between natural wellness supporters and parents demanding accountability. A wellness blogger finds the news story 3 days after charges are filed. She writes a long post on her site defending Mrs. Lynchard and attacking me. The post claims I'm a victim of pharmaceutical companies who profit from keeping people sick. She says my allergies are actually toxin overload from years of processed food and chemical exposure. According to her, Mrs. Lynchard was trying to help me detox, and my body's violent reaction proves how poisoned I am. The post includes photos of Mrs. Lynchard from her social media showing her at the school events and with students. The blogger frames her as a caring teacher being destroyed for trying to heal children. Her followers start sharing the post across social media. They flood the comment sections of news articles with links to essential oil research and testimonials. Some of them find my social media accounts and start sending me messages. They link to detox protocols and tell me I'm being lied to by doctors who want to keep me sick. A few send angry messages calling me a liar who is ruining a good teacher's life. River calls when she sees the blog post and tells me to document everything but don't respond. She says they want me to engage so they can claim I'm attacking them. The harassment gets worse over the next week. I make all my social media accounts private after strangers keep finding me and sending messages. Jordan offers to help screen my messages and friend requests. He goes through everything before I see it and blocks the worst accounts. People send me links to essential oil companies and testimonials about how oils cured everything from allergies to cancer. Some messages call me a paid actor for pharmaceutical companies. Others say I'm too sensitive and need to toughen up. A few are just mean, saying I deserve what happened for being weak. The constant notifications make my phone buzz all day. I stopped checking social media completely because every time I open an app, there are more messages waiting. Jordan shows me some of the worst ones, people saying Mrs. Lynchard should sue me for defamation. It's exhausting and scary having this army of strangers who think they know better than my allergist. They act like nearly dying from anaphylaxis was my fault for not being healthy enough. Mom wants to respond to defend me, but River says that will only make it worse. River drafts a cease and desist letter to the wellness blogger for defamation and encouraging harassment of a minor. The letter points out specific false statements in the blog post about my medical condition. It demands the post be removed immediately and threatens legal action if the harassment continues. River sends it through her law firm with all the official letterhead and legal language. The blog post comes down within 48 hours. The blogger posts a vague statement about respecting legal processes but doesn't apologize. River explains that while people can have opinions about essential oils and natural medicine, they can't make false claims about a specific person's medical condition. They especially can't encourage their followers to harass a minor. The legal threat worked where blocking and reporting didn't. Most of the harassment stops after the blog post disappears. A few people still send occasional messages, but Jordan keeps blocking them. River files copies of everything for potential future legal action if needed. 3 weeks pass after the board meeting before River calls about the district's attorney contacting her. They want to discuss settlement options before the criminal trial starts. River explains they're trying to resolve the civil liability and avoid a lawsuit that would cost them much more. She tells my parents we should listen to what they offer, but we're not accepting any settlement that includes a gag order. We won't sign anything that stops us from talking about what happened or prevents policy changes. The district wants this to go away quietly, but River says we have leverage because the evidence is so strong. The body cam footage alone makes them look terrible. The ignored complaints show a Anderson of negligence. Jason's investigation documented everything. River schedules a meeting with the district's attorney for the following week to hear their initial offer. She warns us it will probably be low and designed to make them feel better about their liability exposure. We'll counter with what we actually want, which is real policy change and accountability, not just money to shut us up. The settlement offer arrived by email 3 days later, a PDF with 12 pages of legal language that River printed out and spread across her desk. She read through it while I sat across from her, watching her pen mark up the margins with notes. The financial terms covered everything: medical bills paid in full, my destroyed laptop and textbooks replaced, therapy costs for the next 2 years. Even compensation for pain and suffering that added up to more money than I'd ever seen. River flipped to page 8 and tapped her pen against a section highlighted in yellow. The non-disclosure agreement took up 3 full pages. It would prevent me from ever discussing what happened in that classroom, ever naming Mrs. Lynchard publicly, ever talking to media or posting online about the incident. I couldn't even tell future colleges or employers why I had medical accommodations. River looked up and said this was completely unacceptable. They were trying to buy my silence about a teacher who nearly killed students. She started drafting our counterproposal that same afternoon, typing while explaining each change. We would accept the financial terms, but the NDA would only cover the settlement amount itself, nothing else. Then she added our real demands. The district had to implement fragrance-free policies in every classroom, not just mine. Mandatory staff training on disability accommodations every year. Quick-release window mechanisms installed in all classrooms so students could never be trapped again. Stock epinephrine injectors in every building. River finished typing and read me the last line she'd added. She told them they could buy real policy reform, or they could go to trial where a jury would hear everything. We sent the counterproposal the next morning. 2 weeks passed with no response from the district. During that time, the criminal case kept moving forward. River called one Tuesday to say Mrs. Lynchard's attorney had approached the prosecutor about a plea deal. Mrs. Lynchard would plead guilty to misdemeanor reckless endangerment. No jail time, just 2 years probation and 200 hours of community service. The key part was she would voluntarily surrender her teaching license permanently. The prosecutor wanted our input as victims before agreeing to anything. River came over that evening to explain what the plea deal actually meant. She sat at our kitchen table with her legal pad, drawing out the 2 options. Plea deal meant guaranteed conviction, and Mrs. Lynchard would definitely lose her teaching license. No chance she could ever teach again, but it also meant no jail time for nearly killing me and Amber. The alternative was going to trial where a jury might feel sorry for her. They might see a well-meaning teacher who made a mistake instead of someone who locked students in a room while they suffocated. The jury could find her not guilty, and she could keep her license. I hated every part of this choice. Mrs. Lynchard should go to jail for what she did. She poured oil on my belongings while I bled and choked. She locked the door and smiled. But River was right about the risk. If we went to trial and lost, she could do this to other students. The permanent license loss meant she was done teaching forever. That mattered more than my anger. Mom and Dad agreed after talking it through for an hour. We called the prosecutor the next day and said we would support the plea deal. The district's response to our settlement counterproposal came in the following week. They accepted everything. Full financial payment, all the policy changes, the narrow NDA that only covered the dollar amount. River scheduled another meeting to finalize details and added one more demand. The district had to issue a public statement acknowledging that fragrance-free accommodations are required under federal disability law. They had to describe the new policies they were implementing. River told them she wanted accountability on the public record, not just a private settlement. The district's attorney tried to push back, but River reminded him about the body cam footage and 28 student witnesses. They agreed to the public statement clause. River had the final settlement documents drawn up within 3 days. Mrs. Lynchard's guilty plea hearing was scheduled for 3 months after the incident. I went to the courthouse with my parents and River, sitting in the back of the courtroom while the judge handled other cases first. When Mrs. Lynchard's case was called, she walked to the front with her attorney. She looked smaller than I remembered, her voice quiet when the judge asked how she pleaded. Guilty to misdemeanor reckless endangerment. The judge asked if she wanted to make a statement. Mrs. Lynchard read from a paper her attorney handed her, something about not intending harm and believing in natural wellness approaches. She never actually said what she did, never acknowledged locking students in a room while they suffocated. Never mentioned pouring oil on my belongings or spraying it in Amber's face. The judge sentenced her to 2 years probation, 200 hours of community service at a food bank, and permanent revocation of her teaching license. The whole hearing took 12 minutes. We walked out of the courthouse and I felt strange. Not satisfied, not happy, just tired and done with this part. The district released their public statement that same week. It went out to all families and got posted on the school website. They announced new fragrance-free policies for all classrooms, mandatory annual training for staff on disability accommodations and emergency protocols, quick release mechanisms being installed on all classroom windows, stock epinephrine injectors placed in every school building. They referenced a recent serious incident as the reason for these changes without naming me or Mrs. Lynchard specifically. It wasn't perfect. I wish they had admitted more directly what went wrong. But these policy changes were real and would protect other students. River saved copies of everything for our records. Going back to the school full-time felt scary at first. The new accommodations were in place by the start of the next semester. Every teacher announced the fragrance-free policy on the first day of class. Most students didn't care and just followed the rules. When someone forgot and showed up wearing strong cologne, the teacher quietly asked them to step out and wash it off in the bathroom. Nobody made a big deal about it. The system actually worked. I could sit in class without my chest tightening, without watching the door to make sure I could escape. Teachers kept their windows accessible. The school nurse had my updated action plan and epinephrine ready. Jordan still checked in with me between classes and ran interference when people asked nosy questions. Having these protections in place made school feel less dangerous. Juliet scheduled counseling sessions with me twice a week to work through everything that happened. The nightmares came less often now. I used to wake up choking 3 or 4 times a week, convinced I was back in that locked classroom. Now it happened maybe once a week, sometimes less. Juliet taught me techniques for managing when I smelled something strong and my chest started to tighten. The 5-4-3-2-1 grounding method helped me stay present instead of panicking. She reminded me during one session that healing doesn't happen in a straight line. Some days were harder than others. Some weeks I felt fine, and then something would trigger a bad reaction. That was normal and okay. Progress wasn't about never having bad days. It was about having more tools to handle them when they came. Arav scheduled a follow-up appointment to check my lung function and review everything. I went in on a Friday afternoon and did the breathing tests while he monitored the results. He pulled up my charts from right after the incident and compared them to the current numbers. There had been improvement. My lung capacity was better than it had been 3 months ago. The inflammation had gone down. He said my lungs had recovered well from the acute reaction, but he was clear that I would always need to be careful about fragrance exposure. My sensitivity wasn't going away. The new school policies should prevent another incident like what happened with Mrs. Lynchard. He updated my emergency action plan and gave me 2 new epinephrine injectors to keep with me. He scheduled another follow-up in 6 months to track continued improvement. Jordan started checking in with me between classes, just a quick, "You good?" or a nod that meant he had my back. When people asked nosy questions about what happened in Mrs. Lynchard's room, he would step in and change the subject or flat out tell them it wasn't their business. Lisa did the same thing, redirecting conversations when someone wanted details I didn't want to share. Mike would walk with me past the old classroom so I didn't have to go alone. We never talked about it directly, but there was this understanding between us now, like we all survived something together, and that meant something. It bonded us in a way that felt real and solid, not forced or fake. They just got it without me having to explain. 4 months after everything went down, my phone buzzed with a text from a number I almost didn't recognize. It was Amber. She said she wanted to thank me for speaking up when she couldn't, for making the board listen and pushing for changes. She told me she was seeing a therapist twice a week and doing better, though she had transferred to a different school where she could start fresh without everyone knowing her as the girl who collapsed in history class. We started texting every few weeks after that, just checking in. Two people who went through the same nightmare, finding our own ways to heal. She didn't need to be at my school or in my daily life for us to understand each other. Sometimes that distance made it easier to be honest about the hard days. The settlement check arrived on a Tuesday, a number that covered every medical bill from the ER visit and follow-ups, replaced my destroyed laptop and textbooks, and funded ongoing therapy sessions with Juliet for as long as I needed them. River called that afternoon to tell me she was closing our case, everything filed and finished. She walked me through the final paperwork, a detailed folder of what we accomplished together. Policy changes across the whole district. Criminal conviction on record. Mrs. E. Lynchard's teaching license gone forever. Financial accountability that meant something. River told me I should be proud of how I stood up for myself, how I pushed through the fear and made them listen. Her voice was warm but professional, and I realized this was probably the last time we would talk. The case was done. 5 months after that terrible day in AP history, I walked past Mrs. Lynchard's old classroom on my way to lunch. A new teacher stood at the board, writing something about the Civil War. A laminated sign on the door announced the fragrance-free policy in bold letters. The windows were open, fresh air moving through the room. My chest got tight for a second, that automatic fear response Juliet warned me about. I stopped walking and counted 5 things I could see, 4 things I could hear, 3 things I could touch. The tightness eased. My breathing stayed steady. The fear was still there, sitting in my chest like a weight, but it was manageable now. I wasn't alone in this anymore. The school had systems in place that would actually protect me. Teachers who followed the rules. Windows that opened when they needed to. Policies that meant something. It wasn't perfect, but it was real safety I didn't have before, and that made all the difference. Cool, so that took 5 months to resolve and resulted in actual policy changes. Shocking, I know. If listening to the slow grind of accountability was entertaining enough for you, consider subscribing. Or don't. I'm not your guidance counselor. Either way, I've got more stories about institutions finally doing the right thing after being forced to. Catch you later.